Another really common need with data imports revolves around modifying existing columns or adding new columns. In reality, most datasets will give us the majority of the data we want, but there still might be a bit of data that's missing or that needs to be slightly modified. So, in this video, I want to show you 3 common ways that you can add or modify table columns using the Power Query Editor. Each of these transformation types applies to a business requirement, and knowing when and how to apply each of these types of column modifications will give you a great start when working with your own data. The first business scenario is the most straightforward. That's when we'll have a table that we want to add additional columns to, without modifying the original columns in any way, with the final result being a table output that contains all of the original columns, plus any new ones. The next business scenario is when you have 2 columns in a table that you would like to combine. A great example is first name and last name. With Power Query, you can easily merge these columns into a new combined column. In this case, that would be a new column called full name. This scenario eliminates the original 2 columns and leaves you only with the new merged column. Now, the last business scenario I want to cover is modifying columns. Let's say you have a column that contains data like this. The information has both brand name and product name, and there are many ways you can transform the information for scenarios like this. Examples such as removing the brand name altogether, leaving us with just the product name in our final column. Alright, now that we have a general idea of the types of transformations we'll be applying, let's go ahead and hop into our Power BI file. Alright, so we have the Power BI desktop file in front of us that we've been using in all of our videos. As a quick reminder, if you go up to the upper left and select Edit Queries, that'll open the Power Query Editor. Perfect. Now to start with, I want to go ahead and navigate to my store table, because that will have a lot of good data to run through all the examples that I want to discuss with you on how to add, merge, or modify columns. Now that first step that I want to do is the Add Column step. So let's go ahead and look for some information that we might want to do that with. I'm going to scroll over. And if you take a look over on the right, you'll see that there are 2 columns currently, Manager First Name and Manager Last Name. And what I've discussed with the client is they would like to have a new column called Manager Full Name. Now to start with what I want to do, so I don't end up with a second, a third, or a fourth changed type step potentially, because I like to leave change type to the very, very end of all of my calculations. I'm going to come over to my applied step, select the rename column step. That way if I add a new applied step in here, it's going to go in between this step and the change type step. I'm going to start by selecting Manager First Name, holding Control, selecting Manager Last Name, and if you right click, you have an option among all these cool transformations you can do to add columns from examples. So let me click this and then walk you through what these are, or what this is. Now it's going to ask me to insert a step, and that's because I'm not selecting the latest or last step in my applied steps list. So it is giving me a friendly warning, do you want to insert a step in the middle of your transformations? And yes, I do, because I want it to come before the change type step. Alright, let's discuss what's in front of us. So if you take a look up here on the left, you'll see that it says Add Columns from Examples. And below that, it says Enter Sample Values to create a new column. Now what that's referring to is this column over here on the right, column 1. I'm going to provide a sample value in here, and you'll see what's going to happen as we do that. So after talking to the client, they want first or last name, comma, space, and first. So that's what I'm going to type into row 1, which will be SAENZ, comma, space, MIGUEL. And now watch the cool thing that happens when I hit the enter button. See that? It instantly populated all the things below there, given the example that I provided. Let's go over back to the left again and take a look. And what it's doing is it now has an additional row in there that says transform, which is a text combine, and it's combining the last name with a comma, space, and then the first name. Now, if the example hadn't worked fully yet, you can provide a second, third, and fourth. So as another example here, I can provide Ackers Kim, and as many examples as I need, and then one of 2 things will happen. It'll either get it right, or it will eventually just fail and say, I don't really know what you're trying to do. Go write your own custom column. But I won't get too far in the weeds with that in this video. So to top it off, I'm going to call this manager full name, hit enter, and then I'm going to hit that OK button. Beautiful. And you can see where that added it to. It added it right before the change type. There's a new step over there called inserted merged column. Now that's still kind of a generic name, so to top it off, I'm going to right click, rename, call this inserted manager full name. Alright, now that we've seen how to add an additional column while keeping all of our originals, let's also talk about the alternative. What if instead the client that I have did not want the first name and last name at all in the final table? They only wanted the new full name column. Well, right now, in our example that we just walked through, that would create unnecessary data. We have 2 columns in here that the customer does not need. Now I could go ahead and add another remove column step or rearrange the applied steps to get rid of that, but I want to show you an easy way to do that as well using the merge function. So to start with, I'm going to go to inserted manager full name and I'm going to delete that, hitting this little X button here because I do not want that anymore. Then I'm going to go back to the rename column step because I want to add this before the change type. I'm going to repeat a very similar process like last time. Selecting manager first name, holding control, selecting manager last name. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go down here to the option in the middle called merge columns. And I do want to insert a step right before the change type, so that's fine. Now an important thing to note here, there are 2 options that I have. I have my separator and the name of the new column. So my separator has some common ones here in the middle. These are the symbols or characters that you can add between your 2 values that you're combining, but we want a custom one. So I'm going to select custom. I'm going to put comma and space, and I'm going to call this manager full name. And I'm going to hit OK. There we are. Now you'll notice that the first name and the last name are completely gone, and all I'm left with is manager full name. Now, just to top that off, let's go ahead and rename that column to added manager full name. Perfect. Now let's look at our preview at the end to make sure everything works. So you notice that there's an error message happening now. When I select change type, let's take a look over here on the left. It is saying that specifically in the error message, the column manager first name wasn't found. Now remember when we did the detect data type on all the existing columns? Well, those columns no longer exist, so it can't detect the data type on them anymore. So it's giving you an error message saying it is looking for a column that doesn't exist. Coming back over to our applied steps, the step before it works, this step is currently broken. So we can actually delete and then redo this step fairly easily. I'm going to hit the X button next to change type to delete it. Perfect. And then I can do that same practice again. Selecting in the middle of the table, Control A to select all of my columns, go up to transform, and then select detect data type. There we are. Taking a look back on our applied steps, we'll see that it is added back in that list over here as a change type step. Alright, we've seen how to add a column. We've seen how to merge columns. The last thing I want to do is show you how to modify a column. Let's take a look at our data again. So I want us to all look at the store name column right here. Now there's one thing in this data that's consistently showing up that I don't think we really need for our final report. The word Contoso is in the front of all these stores, but this is already a report for the Contoso company. So I don't really need it to say Contoso St. Petersburg store on row 1 or Contoso Baldwin store on row 2. I would really like to just get rid of the word Contoso in front of all of these. So we can do that fairly easily. If we right click on the header of this, I can come down to the middle and I can select replace values right here. I'm going to select that. And what value do I want to find? I want to find Contoso. Now it's very important here. If I don't want a leading space to still be in my values, I want to also find Contoso plus that first space right after it. And I replace it with nothing. I don't want to replace it with anything in this list. So I'm going to hit OK. Beautiful. Now you'll see that all of these filled out and it removed all the information that I did not want. Well, let's take a look back over on the right, and you'll notice that replaced value is still kind of generic, so let's rename that. And I'm going to change the name from replaced value to removed contoso from store name. Now notice too that this step is coming after my change type. I like that to be at the very, very end. We can actually right click on this applied step and say move up. There we are. Now it's still in the order that I like, and it's kept it nice and clean. So there's good ways to arrange and organize it. That about does it for our column transformations in this video. In the next video, I'm going to be showing you how to use a merge table function to combine tables where you might really only want one as opposed to multiple tables in your data model.